Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel, where today we are going to be doing my October mid-month wrap-up. So we're going to talk about everything that I read in the first 2 weeks of October, starting with In the Study with the Wrench by Diana Peter Freund. So, In the Study with the Wrench is the second book in the Clue mystery series, which is a YA murder mystery series. It's actually a trilogy, so this is the second book in the trilogy. But we are essentially at a boarding school following a group of kids who have suspiciously familiar names. And in the first book, as well as in this second book, somebody is murdered, and they got to figure out who done it. So I have been describing this as trashy reality TV meets murder mystery with homages to the original Clue movie thrown in. And in this one, the people drama, was so good. Now, it is YA people drama, and it's also kind of rich people drama, but not the like rich people drama that really just makes you mad, just like the stupid stuff, right? I really enjoyed this. There's a lot of secrets, a lot of intrigue. Things are coming out. There's still things that have not yet been revealed, but there have been hints along the way. So we know we're going to get more in that last book. I really enjoyed this particular aspect of these books, is that people drama, which is great because unfortunately in this one, the murder mystery was just not that strong. So the person is murdered at the beginning of the book, and then like we don't do a ton of investigation. There's not a whole lot of, oh, I could be next, or who did it, or any of that. It is a little bit there, but it's mostly in the background to basically everything else that is going on, which is really unfortunate because when we got to the ending and we kind of wrapped up the mystery aspect, that was a tense scene and it was good. However, it lacked the emotional impact because we just didn't build up to it properly throughout the whole book. So it was just really unfortunate, that part of it. So with that, I do think that the balance between the actual murder mystery and the people drama, and also like the kids dealing with the aftermath of the previous murder, like that balance just was way off. And so I enjoyed this book quite a bit because I did really like all of the stuff going on with the kids, the drama, the intrigue, the secrets, everything going on. But the murder mystery was a little sad, in my opinion. But because I enjoyed it so much, I still did end up giving this 4 stars. And then after that, I picked up Minecraft The Island by Max Brooks. So this is elementary school, maybe middle grade. I think more elementary school though. And in this book, we are following our main character who wakes up in the middle of the ocean and has to swim to the nearby island. Only things are really weird, and it turns out that's because they woke up in a Minecraft world. And they have to figure out how to survive in this world. So I actually think that this is a really great book for kids. We're following this main character who is not familiar with Minecraft. And they're doing things and making mistakes and having to learn from their mistakes. And I really like that there is such an emphasis on learning from those mistakes. When the main character learns something, they kind of come up with a phrase so that it can become a rule for them so they can remember it later. And at the back of the book, they actually do gather up all of those phrases into a guide of like tips and tricks. And so I really, really liked that aspect of it. And like, I will say that if you don't play Minecraft, this may be harder to understand, but I still think that it's okay for most people. So I will say though that this is a little bit over the top for an adult reader. And so while I still think that this is great for kids, it didn't really work for me particularly. It is the most enjoyable book that I've read that my older child has picked out, but it still didn't quite click for me, and I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. So then after that, I reread Kingdom of Needle and Bone by Mira Grant. So this is a horror novella, and in it we are following our main character of Dr. Gowley, and basically she is a medical doctor who is trying to navigate the future when she is one of very few people who knows for a fact that a pandemic is coming. And the story goes from there. So, yes, this is a pandemic horror, and I will strongly caution anybody who has anxiety around pandemics in like be careful reading this book because Mira Grant writes realistic kind of biomedical horror. Essentially, she really researches it, and so it's not probable that it's going to happen, but it is plausible within the confines of like biology. And so that's a little terrifying in and of itself. So just be really cautious. So I really liked this book the first time I read it, and this second time I really noted that it was interesting to look at the societal reactions to this pandemic. The societal reactions are definitely a little bit more background, but they very much match up with what I the experience has been in the U.S. especially um, to within the COVID-19 pandemic, which in some ways like that's really interesting, but also a little sad. But I did find it very interesting. The other really interesting conversation in this book that it's not a major part of the book by any stretch of the imagination, but like talking about bodily autonomy when it comes to vaccines and mandating vaccines, and also like how do you talk about that without making it so that like people can't um, outlaw abortions because like if you're taking away bodily autonomy for vaccines then the law should sit like unless you are very careful with the wording, the law would also take away your right to get an abortion. So I thought that that was a really interesting conversation and one that I definitely did not really notice the first time through. I will note that this novella is told in a very interesting kind of way. It's much more narrated. It's like it's a narrated story in that there's like not a ton of dialogue, not a ton of action, but we're just being told what happened. And actually, it it is a little strange to get used to, but honestly, I do think that this particular storytelling device worked really well for this particular novella. One thing that I did not necessarily appreciate is that the ending left me with some questions. Now, it left me with questions the first time through as well, but now that I knew how the ending was going to go, when I went back and reread it, I thought some of my questions might get answered, and like, no, none of them did. I think that this was intentional on the part of the author. However, I'm a little sad because, like, I didn't love it. But overall, I do think that this was a really well written book and I enjoyed it very much and I ended up giving it 4 stars. And then I picked up Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. And this is also a horror novella. And we are following our main character of Junior, who is 12 years old, and he one night is at the window looking out, and out of the corner of his eyes, he sees a figure which he is pretty sure is his dad, which is really weird because his dad has been dead for many years. And so Junior decides to get to the bottom of the mystery, and the story goes from there. So I'm going to be very upfront and say I did not like this book. So how it's written, it's like not entirely clear what we're doing or where we're going. So like you can see kind of a general idea, but we don't have any kind of specific ideas. I very much likened it to like looking at a puzzle that have huge chunks of pieces missing. You can kind of tell what it's going to be, but you really don't have a clear picture. And I honestly just don't really like that kind of storytelling. So it wasn't until page 90 out of like 108 that I finally understood what we were doing. And to me, that is just way too long to wait for understanding, especially for a novella. Also, I hated the ending. So in the last 15 to 20 pages, we have this ending that makes no sense. Based off of what we know of the characters and their motivations, it made no sense. I saw what the author was trying to do, but the author very much relied on assumptions that should not have been relied upon. So there needed to be more character work done so that you could fully understand why this choice was being made. And so, because we didn't get that character work and I kind of hated the choice, I ended up closing this book and just being mad about it. Like, I was so angry about this because, I wasn't enjoying reading it up until that point. And then I got to this ending and it was just like, why did I bother? And so that really just, it made me mad. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars. And then lastly, I read Final Girls by Mira Grant, which is another horror novella. And in this one, we are following our main character of Esther. Esther is a scientific journalist, and she is being sent out to this facility that does virtual reality for therapeutic uh, benefits, I guess. And essentially, what happens is the participants go into these pods and are entered into this virtual reality simulation. They are given a cocktail of drugs. And so within this simulation that they agreed upon beforehand, it feels very real. It induces a lot of very real emotions, and those emotions can help rewrite the brain. And again, it's all for therapeutic purposes. So Esther is there to report on this and investigate it and see if it is actually legitimate or if it's not doing what it is supposed to. But things go very, very wrong. So this is a book that was well written, but I didn't really click with it. Well written for the most part. So here's the thing, I didn't find this being in a virtual reality situation hopped up on drugs. I didn't find that to be scary. I didn't find the situation that Esther found herself to be all that scary. What really hit me was actually the ending, where we kind of have the implications of we wrap up what happened at the end and the implications for going forward for both Esther and the wider population. And I found that to be scary. But up until that point, I was just like, yeah, it's a speculative novella. And so I was hoping for a little bit more scary in the middle. But also, I just didn't find this book to be nearly as imaginative as most Mira Grant books, because I know that virtual reality to some extent is being used for therapeutic purposes. Very small amounts and everything, but it's not that far off from, we're not that far off from it. And so I didn't find anything about this to be super imaginative, which is also kind of what I was hoping for. And so it was just okay, I can see it, but also it didn't really do it for me. And then the one thing that I did think that was not well done is that one of the end plot points, the major plot points, hinged on a super competent person making a mistake. And that does happen, but I think you have to spend extra time ensuring that the reader understands why the mistake was made, rather than just saying, oh, a competent person makes mistakes too. And I'm like, no, no, no. If they're the best, then they shouldn't be making those kinds of mistakes. So I got a little bit annoyed with that. So overall, I thought it was well written. It is Mira Grant does really well with novellas, but it just didn't quite work for me. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, and I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. So that is it. That is everything that I read in the first 2 weeks of October. Leave me comments down below. Let me know if you have any thoughts or feelings about any of the things that I have read, or if you want to let me know what you have been reading. But that is all I have for this particular video. So if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, have happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!